The town of Hollow Creek had always seemed quiet, almost too quiet. Nestled between rolling hills and vast stretches of woods, the town had an eerie, timeless quality. To an outsider, it was an ordinary small town, but to Alex Turner, an investigative journalist, it was the kind of place that made his pulse quicken. There was a story hidden in Hollow Creek. He could feel it. His editor, Sarah, had called him into her office that morning, her face serious as she handed him a slim folder with a single name typed on it, St. Michael's Church. The church in Hollow Creek was a source of rumors, she'd said. People had stopped going there. Families were wary of it, but no one had dared to speak publicly about why. Some claimed it was cursed, others said it held dark secrets. But what secrets could an old church in a forgotten town possibly hold? Go find out, Sarah had told him. And so here he was, arriving at Hollow Creek on a chilly autumn afternoon. The first sight of St. Michael's Church sent a shiver down Alex's spine. It was unlike any other church he'd seen. It loomed over the small town, built of dark stone, with towering spires that seemed to claw at the sky. The Gothic architecture was imposing, with tall, narrow windows and walls covered in vines. The church's age was obvious. Cracks marred its facade, and yet it seemed somehow alive. There was a weight in the air around it, something oppressive that made Alex hesitate before stepping through the gate. Inside, he found an unsettling quiet. The pews were empty, their polished wood gleaming in the dim light filtering through stained glass. The faint scent of incense lingered, mixing with the mustiness of old stone. At the far end of the room, he saw a figure standing by the altar. It was Father Joseph, the priest of St. Michael's, and the man rumored to be at the center of the church's mysteries. Father Joseph greeted Alex with a calm, reserved demeanor. He had piercing eyes that seemed to look right through him, and a soft voice that barely broke the heavy silence of the church. As Alex introduced himself, he sensed a subtle shift in Father Joseph's expression, a flicker of something that might have been worry or warning. "What brings you to our humble church?" Father Joseph asked. "Curiosity," Alex replied, not quite ready to reveal his true purpose. "It's unusual for a church to be so empty." Father Joseph's lips tightened into a thin line. "Not all places are meant to be crowded. Some hold a sacred space, reserved for those who truly seek peace." But there was no peace here, Alex thought. The church felt anything but peaceful. There was an almost palpable tension in the air, like the place itself was hiding something. As Alex left his conversation with Father Joseph, a nagging curiosity gnawed at him. There was more to this church than met the eye. He decided to speak with the townspeople, hoping they might reveal something Father Joseph wouldn't. His first stop was a small diner near the church, where a few locals gathered each evening. An elderly woman, Mrs. Harper, was the first to speak up when Alex mentioned St. Michael's. She leaned forward, her eyes wary. "That church," she whispered, "wasn't always what it is today." "What do you mean?" Alex pressed gently. She hesitated before explaining. Before St. Michael's was built, that land was sacred. At least, that's what they say. There was a grove there, a place where people gathered long before the church. Some say the church absorbed energies from that land. Alex's curiosity intensified. Energies. She nodded. People around here talk of strange occurrences. Flickering lights at night, shadows that seem to have minds of their own. There are stories of people seeing figures in the windows long after services end. "We don't go near it after dark." Another man at the diner, Tom, chimed in, "If you're smart, you'll leave well enough alone. That place has a life of its own, and it doesn't like intruders." Ignoring the warnings, Alex returned to the church that night, determined to uncover the truth. As he slipped through the creaking door, he felt a sudden chill, as though the temperature had dropped several degrees. His footsteps echoed against the stone floor as he moved down the aisles, his flashlight casting long, unsettling shadows. In the dim light, he noticed a door behind the altar, one he hadn't seen before. He felt a pull toward it, as if something on the other side was calling him. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling down into the dark. He descended, the air growing colder and more suffocating with each step. The stairs led to a hidden room filled with shelves lined with ancient books, strange artifacts, and statues of unknown figures. The walls were adorned with symbols he didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. As he examined the symbols, he heard a faint whisper echoing in the room. The words were indistinct but filled with urgency, almost as if they were warning him to leave. Startled, Alex spun around to see Father Joseph standing at the foot of the stairs, his face hidden in shadow. "What are you doing down here?" Father Joseph's voice was calm, but his eyes held a glint of something unsettling. "I could ask you the same," Alex retorted, trying to keep his voice steady. "What is this place?" Father Joseph stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "You're standing in a sanctuary of sorts. This room holds relics and artifacts from ages past, remnants of beliefs and energies that most would never understand." He went on to explain that the church had been built to protect these items, and the townspeople's fear of St. Michael's was not unfounded. The church, he claimed, was a gatekeeper, standing between this world and something far older and darker. "But why keep it hidden?" Alex asked, unsettled. "Not all truths are meant to be shared," Father Joseph replied. "Some knowledge is too dangerous. Those who seek it often pay a price they cannot afford." Father Joseph's warning lingered in Alex's mind, but he couldn't walk away now. He needed answers. Determined to uncover what the priest and the church were hiding, Alex returned to his temporary lodging that night to comb through the photographs and notes he'd taken. One picture in particular stood out, a shot of the strange symbols in the hidden room beneath the church. When Alex zoomed in, he noticed faint carvings resembling ancient writing, almost like warnings etched into the walls. The next day, he decided to visit the town's library. After hours of research, he discovered that the symbols were similar to those used in ancient rituals meant to seal supernatural forces. He was no longer dealing with mere rumors. There was a dark history behind this church. Curiosity drove Alex to seek out the oldest resident of Hollow Creek, a man named Eli, who was known for his knowledge of the town's history. When Alex mentioned the church and its secrets, Eli's face grew pale. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into," Eli warned in a trembling voice. "My great-grandfather was there when they built St. Michael's. It was a different time back then. The land under that church, it's cursed." Eli explained that the site had once been a gathering place for an ancient cult, known for rituals invoking spirits from another realm. The church had been built over the original site to seal away the lingering energies. They thought the cross would hold the darkness at bay, but evil roots itself deep, Eli whispered, his eyes haunted. Armed with this disturbing knowledge, Alex decided to attend a special midnight service rumored to take place once a month at St. Michael's. As he entered the church, he noticed a small group of townspeople seated in silence. They looked tense, almost fearful. Father Joseph stood before them, his figure cloaked in shadow, holding a book that appeared ancient and weathered. The service began with hymns, but something felt wrong. As the congregation chanted, the room grew colder, and the shadows around the altar seemed to writhe and grow darker. Father Joseph recited words in a language Alex couldn't understand, his voice low and rhythmic. Then, as the chanting reached its peak, the lights flickered, and a figure appeared behind the altar, a dark, shifting form that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The congregation gasped, but no one moved, as if they were frozen in place. Alex's heart raced. This wasn't a normal service, it was some kind of ritual. And whatever they were summoning wasn't meant for the living. After the service, Alex confronted Father Joseph outside the church. "You're performing rituals," he accused, his voice shaking. "You're summoning something." Father Joseph looked at him, his face impassive. "I warned you to stay away. The rituals are not for you to understand. They are for the protection of this town. What lies beneath the church is older than you can imagine. We must honor it, or suffer its wrath. What are you summoning? Alex pressed, horrified. It's not about summoning, Father Joseph replied. It's about containment. The forces we deal with are too powerful to be fully suppressed. Our rituals keep them dormant, but they demand respect and sacrifice. Alex realized he was in over his head, but he couldn't stop now. Determined to expose the truth, he went back to the hidden room beneath the church to gather evidence. This time, he found more than just symbols. There were records dating back centuries, detailing the church's role in containing supernatural forces, with lists of names and dates. Many of the people listed had disappeared, their names crossed out with chilling precision. Suddenly, Alex heard footsteps. Father Joseph stood in the doorway, his face grim. "You should never have come here," the priest said, his voice almost sorrowful. "Now you know too much." Before Alex could react, a powerful force seemed to push him backward, and he felt a crushing weight settle over him. Shadows crept in from every corner, swallowing the light, and he felt the room spinning. Alex struggled to his feet, realizing he had to get out. The shadows seemed to follow him, stretching and warping as he stumbled up the stairs and out of the church. He barely managed to escape, but he knew he couldn't stay in Hollow Creek any longer. He left that night, carrying with him a notebook full of evidence, pictures of the hidden room, and an overwhelming sense of dread. As he drove away, he felt as though the shadows of St. Michael's were still watching him. Days later, Alex published his story, revealing the truth about the rituals, the hidden room, and the dark forces lurking beneath St. Michael's Church. The article spread quickly, and people from all over came to read about the haunted town and its cursed church. But Hollow Creek's residents refused to speak to outsiders. Father Joseph and his congregation denied everything, claiming that Alex had fabricated the story. Yet, those who read it couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to St. Michael's than met the eye. Alex himself never returned to Hollow Creek, but he could never forget the feeling of those shadows closing in, or the knowledge that some secrets were meant to stay buried. The town of Hollow Creek, though seemingly tucked away from the bustling world, had one crucial characteristic. Its history was buried deep beneath the surface, and Alex had scratched just the top layer. Despite the horror he'd encountered, he knew there was much more to discover. The evidence he had wasn't enough to truly expose the horrors of St. Michael's Church. He couldn't just leave it there. He had to dig deeper. Back in his apartment, Alex pored over every scrap of information he had accumulated, the notes, photographs, and even the cryptic journals he found beneath the church. The more he read, the more it became clear. The church wasn't merely a place of worship. It was a vessel, holding back a force so ancient and so malevolent that it could undo everything Alex thought he knew about life and death. Among the pages, he found a diary that caught his attention. It was the journal of a former priest, Father Edmund, who had served at St. Michael's decades before Father Joseph. Father Edmund had written about an event he called the Awakening. The entries were chilling. "The ritual has failed. The creature stirs once more. I have seen its eyes, and I know now that what we have locked away is beyond our understanding." Alex's heart raced as he read on. In the dead of night, Alex's phone rang, the screen flashing with an unknown number. He nearly ignored it but felt an odd sense of urgency. When he picked up, a hoarse voice whispered on the other end. "You should have left, Alex. You've awoken it." Before Alex could respond, the line went dead. He froze, staring at his phone, his breath shallow. Had Father Joseph found him? Was this one of his followers? Or was it something else? The voice echoed in his mind as he remembered the dark presence that lingered beneath St. Michael's. What had Father Joseph said? Some knowledge is too dangerous. What if it wasn't just the church's dark past they were trying to contain, but something far worse, a creature, a being from another realm? Alex began to suspect that the church had been built to keep something far darker than spirits from entering the world. The following day, Alex received a visit from someone unexpected. Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman from the diner, knocked on his door. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She had a package clutched in her arms. But had that been the real reason behind the priest's actions? Or was there something more personal, something buried deep in Father Joseph's past, that had driven him to this? Determined to get answers, Alex returned to the town of Hollow Creek. He was no longer a stranger here. He was now a part of its dark history. He needed to speak with someone who had known Father Joseph before all of this, the priest's closest confidant, someone who might have known the man's motivations better than anyone else. At the town's small library, Alex found a reference to a woman named Eleanor. She had been Father Joseph's assistant for many years before the events of the church began to spiral out of control. Alex tracked her down to a small cottage on the edge of town. Eleanor was in her late 60s, but her eyes still held a sharpness that made Alex uneasy. When Alex asked about Father Joseph, Eleanor grew quiet, the sharpness in her eyes softening into something almost sympathetic. She invited him inside. "You've come to ask about him, haven't you?" she said, her voice calm but distant. "Everyone does, eventually." Alex nodded. Why did Father Joseph do it? What was his real reason for bringing back those rituals? What was he trying to achieve? Eleanor sighed, sitting down slowly in a worn chair. She looked at Alex, her gaze distant, as if reliving memories she would rather forget. Father Joseph was never like other priests. He wasn't just about faith or salvation. He believed in something far older, something darker. You see, Alex, the town was founded on a pact made with a being that promised protection in exchange for an ancient price. Alex frowned, leaning forward. "What do you mean, a pact?" Eleanor hesitated, as if debating whether she should continue. Many years ago, when the town was first established, a group of settlers came upon a strange land. They were desperate, sick, and starving. They had nothing left. That's when they made the pact with the being beneath the church. "A being?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the rising sense of dread in his chest. Eleanor nodded. "The creature that Father Joseph was trying to unleash, it's not just any demon. It's an ancient entity, a force that predates humanity itself. The settlers believed it was a god, a being of power who could provide them with life and protection. In return, they promised it their loyalty and the blood of their descendants." Alex's stomach turned. Blood of their descendants? Eleanor nodded gravely. The pact was binding. Every generation had to give something, whether it was a life, a sacrifice, or a soul. And it was Father Joseph, in his misguided zeal, who thought he could control this entity, believing that he could force it to stop demanding sacrifices. She paused, her eyes glinting with unshed tears. But he didn't understand. No one ever does. The creature's power is beyond comprehension. It never truly stops taking. And when Father Joseph tried to break the pact, he only made things worse. The bloodline, it had to be honored. As Eleanor spoke, Alex felt the weight of her words settle over him. The bloodline, the sacrifice, it was all coming together in his mind. Father Joseph wasn't just trying to protect the town. He had been desperate to break the ancient pact, to end the bloodshed that had haunted Hollow Creek for generations. But he had failed, as the creature had only grown stronger with each failed attempt to break free. Alex stood up abruptly, his heart pounding. "Is there anyone left from that original bloodline?" he asked. "Anyone who could stop this?" Eleanor's face softened with pity. "There's one. One last descendant. But she doesn't know what she carries. No one does." The name Eleanor gave him was Emily Davis, a young woman who had recently moved to Hollow Creek. Emily, as it turned out, was a direct descendant of the original settlers who had made the pact with the creature beneath the church. She had no idea of the legacy that lay within her, nor the role she played in the town's dark history. Alex knew that if he could find Emily, he might be able to prevent the creature from ever being released. But there was a problem. Emily had already been drawn to St. Michael's. She had come into contact with Father Joseph and had begun to experience strange dreams and visions, as if the creature was calling to her. Alex sought out Emily, finding her in the small apartment she rented near the church. She looked as if she had been waiting for him, her eyes wide and fearful. "I've been having dreams," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "Of a shadow, of eyes watching me from the dark. It's like something is calling me." Alex nodded slowly. "You're the last of the bloodline, Emily. The creature is tied to you. It wants you, and it will stop at nothing to claim you." Emily recoiled. "I don't want this. I don't want any part of it." "I know," Alex said softly. "But you're the only one who can stop it. You have to face it. The pact can't be broken unless the creature has what it wants." Alex led Emily to the church, where everything had started. The air was thick with foreboding as they stood before the altar, the very place where the bloodline had first made its terrible pact. Emily stood frozen, her eyes filled with terror. "The creature is coming," Alex said, his voice strained. "We can't run. We have to face it here." Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The shadows swirled and thickened, coalescing into a dark, formless mass that hovered before them, its eyes glowing with unearthly hunger. The creature had returned. Emily stepped forward, her voice shaking but resolute. "Take me. Take what you want, but leave the town. Leave everyone else in peace." For a moment, the creature paused, as if studying her. And then, with a roar that shook the very foundations of St. Michael's, it lunged toward her. But Emily didn't flinch. With a single word, she reached out to the creature, invoking the ancient pact. "I offer myself," she said, her voice strong. "I offer my blood in exchange for freedom." The creature hesitated, its form flickering. Slowly, it began to shrink, its power waning, until it was no more than a faint whisper in the wind. The church was silent once again. Emily vanished from Hollow Creek that night, leaving the town behind to rebuild, to recover from the dark legacy it had carried for centuries. As for Alex, he left too, his work done. He had uncovered the truth, but at a cost. He would never be the same, not after everything he had witnessed. And as he drove away, a chill wind blowing behind him, he couldn't help but wonder if the creature had truly been vanquished, or if, somewhere, deep in the shadows, it was waiting for the next bloodline to rise. After Emily's sacrifice, an eerie silence fell over the church. The creature, which had once thrived in the depths of darkness, was now gone. It vanished as if it had never existed at all. But something deeper remained, an unsettling quiet that left a question lingering in the air. Alex and Emily stood motionless, their breaths rapid, their hearts still racing. Emily's eyes held a strange peace, yet there was an unspoken sadness. She had given the ultimate sacrifice, but was this truly the end? Or was something more yet to unfold? Alex turned to Emily, his face filled with questions, but he hesitated to speak them aloud. "Emily," Alex whispered. "We've ended it, right?" Emily's eyes sparkled with an odd light, as if she knew something Alex didn't. Her smile was cryptic, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. "It's not over, Alex," Emily said, her voice serious, as though she were speaking of a distant future. "We stopped the creature here, but its story isn't finished. It's far from over." Alex frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Alex," Emily said, lowering her gaze, "that creature, it wasn't just a physical entity. It was tied to something older, something deeper. Its power wasn't just of this world. It's connected to the bloodline, our blood." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "Our blood? But I thought we ended the pact." Emily nodded, a quiet resolve settling over her. "We severed the creature's hold on this place, yes, but its essence, its influence, remains in the blood we share. The bloodline is more than just a physical chain, it's a spiritual tether." Alex's mind raced. "Are you saying that it could come back? Even without the sacrifices?" Emily closed her eyes as if hearing something far off, something in the distance. The creature never truly left. It might have receded, but its presence is still here. It doesn't need the blood anymore, not in the way it once did. It will return, waiting for the right moment. Alex's pulse quickened. You mean it's still here? Somewhere. Emily shook her head slowly. Not in the way you think. The creature never really left. It lives on in the blood. The pact may be broken, but its effects ripple through time. And the bloodline, it isn't finished yet. Alex and Emily stepped outside the church, the air thick with the lingering remnants of something ancient. The streets of Hollow Creek were quieter than ever, the townspeople moving like shadows. There was a sense of release, but also an underlying tension, like the calm before a storm. As they walked through the empty town, Alex couldn't shake the weight of Emily's words. Could it really be true? Was the creature merely lying in wait? Was Hollow Creek truly free, or had they only delayed the inevitable? Emily's expression was distant, as if she were already seeing something Alex couldn't. She stopped at the town's edge and looked out over the valley. This town may have escaped its fate for now, but we both know the truth. The creature is never gone. It's just waiting for the right moment to rise again. Alex stood beside her, feeling a chill in the air. So, it's just a matter of time before it comes back. Emily nodded slowly. Yes, but not in the way you think. It won't need the sacrifices. It doesn't need the rituals anymore. The creature's power is in us now, Alex, and we can never escape it. The wind blew cold through the streets, carrying with it the whispers of something long forgotten. The town was quiet, but the silence felt like a warning. Alex looked at Emily, her face pale yet resolute. She had sacrificed herself, but in doing so, she had bound herself to something far more dangerous than she realized. As they walked away from the church, Alex felt the weight of the truth press down on him. They had won, for now. But deep in his gut, he knew that the real battle was just beginning. The creature's influence had never been about flesh and bone. It was about something far older, far darker. And it was only a matter of time before it would rise again. This ending leaves an unsettling sense of anticipation and mystery, suggesting that while the immediate danger may be over, the true horror lies in the bloodline's legacy and the potential return of the creature. The door is left open for future twists, keeping the audience intrigued and eager for more.